Hi guys, so recently I came across, or possibly I was sent a video that basically was talking about the fact that Teslas were banned from certain areas in China, particularly near airports and near military installations. And what was the reason for that? Well, the reason for that was that they were suspected of spying the cars themselves. And I thought, this is a bit weird. I've never heard of this before. A Tesla in China. How could that even make sense? So I Googled it. And actually there were quite a few news stories that confirmed that that was indeed the case. So why is it? What's happening? And let's ask the question. Is your car spying on us? Let's do that right after this. A brown car guy. Right, so going back to that story in China, so what happened was at an airport and some areas, they imposed a ban on Tesla from its parking lots. And what it was, if you think about Teslas, a lot of them have got these autonomous drive systems, autopilot systems, but one particular feature that they have is something called Sentry Mode. And the Sentry Mode is basically monitoring everything around the car whilst you're away from the car. So basically it's like an anti-theft sort of thing, and it's sort of seeing what's going on. And of course part of that does involve cameras. So the presence of these cameras basically triggered potential concerns of espionage activities. This is what China thought about. And they reckon that this could be happening. Now what's happened recently is that Tesla said that that's not the case. They have said that the Tesla cleared the air by explaining the Sentry Mode, which records video footage when the car is parked. They emphasize that this feature is standard anti-theft feature found in many modern cars, but here the data that is captured by Sentry Mode stays within China. And in fact, they said that the video is stored offline on a USB device inside the car. Neither the car owner nor Tesla can remotely access this data. Well, that's actually slightly wrong, because I just checked on the Tesla website, and it does say on the Tesla website that the owner of the car, through an app, because think about it, it'd be kind of redundant that you are recording anti-theft video of a car inside the car and it stays in the car. So if the car gets stolen, you don't actually have that. No, of course not. Of course you have access to it. And in fact, on the website for Tesla, it says that the owner on an app can download that data. They can download that video footage so they can see what's happening 10 minutes prior to when the incident started, if you like. So, and then one has to assume that if the owner can do it, then don't forget, Teslas are connected. I get a bit more into that, but they can do live updates and stuff like that. So one has to suspect that, you can get it. But anyway, apparently they've cleared the air now, and they've said it's okay. So apparently Tesla is being allowed back in certain places. But here's the thing. When you start to think about the fact that, well, if China is so concerned that Tesla might be doing this, then what does China know about the technology in the cars, and in fact its own cars? And this is particularly interesting in light of the news that's literally today and yesterday been in the headlines here in the UK, that they have essentially caught a spy that worked in Parliament and that was gathering data for China. This is allegedly. So this is what's come out now, and the Prime Minister is having words, because they're all at the summit together, where all the world leaders are. So this is all going down right now. So I guess it's particularly topical. Then when you think about, well, could it be that their cars are doing the same, which is why they know this? But actually, it turns out that all cars do this, and all modern cars, that is. And the fact is that your car is actually collecting a lot of information about you, and you may not even know or realize this. It'll do things like, it'll track your driving habits. It remembers where you've been. It can log the websites that you visited when your phone is connected to the infotainment system. In fact, it can use the systems on your phone to collect further data. In some cars, they're so advanced that they can detect if you're wearing a seatbelt. Actually, that's been around for a while. Or how hard you press the brakes, and they can even collect personal information as sensitive as your race, your weight, and your sexual activities. Yep, it's recording all of that. That's what's happening. How is it doing this? Well, modern cars are all equipped with lots of data harvesting tools, as they call them. So things like microphones and cameras, and like I said, it's when it connects to your phone, which of course we all do. The first thing we do is connect our phone to the cars now, right? And through the phone, it can use that stuff as well. And manufacturers collect the data through their apps and their websites as well. So if you go onto their apps, if you sign up to something and stuff like that, that data is also being collected. And sometimes this can be shared with third parties, but that's not unusual for websites. But the data is incredibly valuable for automakers as it helps them improve their vehicles and better features. This is what they claim. This is what they're saying. A is for safety, B is for research, C is for improving the technology that we're offering to our motorists. Basically that's what they're doing. But here's the thing. The data, if it's not handled correctly, that's a lot of information that they're capturing about you as an owner for a start, and theoretically about the car and the car's surroundings. So where the car has been, what the car has seen, somehow, somewhere, all of that data is being captured. Whether it's being transferred or not, it's actually quite possible. All of these modern cars have something called CIM, which is basically like it's connected to the internet. So this is how they can do over-the-air updates and stuff like that. And, presumably information can flow both ways on this stuff. So, and a lot of people out there is like, oh, is Shazad, is the brown car guy suddenly doing all these conspiracy stuff? There's no conspiracy. This is just technological fact. This is just technology. This is just what's happening. The conspiracy side of it is whether or not it's being used for spying. So theoretically, you have to conclude that it could be used for spying. I think that's perfectly possible. It's perfectly legitimate question to ask. So when you've loaded these cars with all of this technology that can monitor both internally and externally pretty much all of the time, wherever it goes, then it's pretty clear that, it's open to espionage. It's open to, in particular, like, okay, the likes of me, who cares about what I'm talking about in a car? But if a car is being used by ministers or CEOs or scientists or people like that, and then you're able to listen in onto the conversation. Remember, a lot of people are very comfortable in their cars because it's one of those areas, one of the cars is one of those places where you feel like, you're isolated, there's nobody around, or if you're talking to somebody, it's just the two of you in the car. That's often the sense, whereas if you're in a house, you're outside, you think people may be listening, or, somebody might be in the next room or whatever. Most of us don't think about the car as, potentially people could be listening in, but it is perfectly possible. And like I said, the car could be monitoring its surrounds as well at the same time. Now, and of course the other thing is, like, there's another point here, is that cars can be remotely hacked. Now, this has actually become a thing that can actually happen. And in fact, there's a recent example. So when the Russians tried to loot Ukrainian agricultural machinery, they couldn't do much with it because the manufacturer, John Deere, turned the equipment off through CIM, through the cellular internet module. They just basically switched them off and the machines became redundant. There's nothing you could do with them. So that's quite extraordinary that that's possible. And also, and I might get the details of this wrong a little bit, but I remember reading a story recently that somewhere in America they were trying to catch a criminal, and they were pretty strong on their suspicions, but they just couldn't figure out where. I think maybe he dumped a body or something like that. And what they did is they went to Chevrolet. And he just had a truck. So it wasn't an EV. It wasn't like a particularly sophisticated car in that sense. It was your typical truck that many Americans drive, Ford F-150, Chevrolet, GMCs, Rams, all of these pickup trucks, right? And so they were able to get the data. They went to the manufacturer and they said, we want the data from this vehicle. They got the data from the vehicle. They found out where it had been. They found out where it had stopped at a certain place in the woods or the forest or whatever. Then they went to that area and they found what they were looking for. So so this is all data that's being captured. Like I said, automakers say that they're using the data to make the car safer, to diagnose any issues with it, to improve the technology in the car, to enhance the driving experience, is what they're saying. But the concerns are because with normal stuff, when you have these data, such as when you're using websites and everything, is why you always hit the agree button or the accept button or whatever, because you have GDPR and CCPA, and these are systems that are there in order to protect your data rights and to give you more control on what's being collected and how it's being used. But you may have noticed, I noticed it in some of the more modern cars that are tested over the years, in the last few years I should say. I think maybe it was in a BMW. And you got in, and part of the startup screen involved you pressing accept on data. And at the time it didn't even occur to me. I was like, what? Accept whatever? What's that for? You know, what's it talking about data for? And then when you see stuff like this, you realize, well, I mean, they're actually collecting a lot of information, a lot of data. And at that point, you're giving them permission to do so and to use that data. You know, whether you know that or not, that's what's actually happening. And it's not just you, the driver, because apparently, according to one manufacturer, they were quoted recently in a report that a passenger in your car means that a passenger car is considered a user because they're riding in the car. So the manufacturer considers them a user, so therefore they can also collect the data on that person. The user, in the sense that the user is in the car by the permission of the driver, so therefore it kind of, what they're saying is that they follow that they've given permission to the driver, and the driver has given permission to the manufacturer to collect that data. It's the driver's responsibility to have seen the privacy policies and have decided whether or not they agree with them. But of course, you know, whoever reads the privacy policies anyway, we never do. We just hit accept, right? That's what we do. And that's what's happening. So what can you do? So what if you are concerned? I mean, I guess most of us aren't concerned. I mean, the reality is when, you know, when people say, oh, you know, you don't want to put too much information on the net or this, and I say, look, the moment you're walking around with a phone, that's it. You know, your data is out there. There's not much we can do in this day and age about our data being out there, because the phone is tracking you all the time anyway. So there's all this concern about the car collecting your information, but don't forget the phone has already done all of that. So, you know, there's not a lot that you can do, but there's obviously the certain things like, you know, apps not to track at all times, so that these things come up, you know. But if you are concerned about your car, and if you have an old-fashioned phone and you're like, okay, well, I've got an old-fashioned phone, what do I do about the car? I mean, like I said, you've got to review and understand the policy things in the car. And apparently, the most modern cars, they will give you, in the menu systems, ways to customize what data is being collected and how it's being collected. So even, for example, the Sentry mode on the Tesla pointed out that the owner has to activate that. So it's not like an automated standard system. It's there, but the owner has to go in and go, right, yes, I want Sentry mode on. And then that actually happens. So, and don't forget, a lot of people have trackers in their cars now for insurance purposes, for anti-theft purposes. So those trackers are there. A lot of people have these camera systems with monitoring front and rear, both for traffic, but also for parking as well. So a lot of this stuff is already in the car, or you are opting in to put it in the car. If you're concerned about this, you can take it out, or you can go in through the menu systems and switch these things off. In most cases. But having said that, the reality is that, you know, even if you're going into the menu and turning them off, they're still kind of there. It's like your phone. I mean, you could turn the camera off, but as far as you know, the camera is still running. You could turn the mic off, as far as you know, the mic is still running, you know. So, you know, these systems are still there. So what can you actually do if you're really concerned about it? Do you remember one of the Fast and Furious movies? Which one was it? I'm sure people out there will tell me which number it was. But it's the one where it's pre-Jason Statham, so it's Jason Statham's brother, you know, when the whole team, I think by The Rock, is invited to go to London to capture this criminal that he says he needs them to do it. And he gives them all BMWs, and you go, oh wow, they're all brand new BMWs. You go, oh, that's pretty cool, you know, of course that's nice new cars for them to go out and wreck. But they don't get a chance because the criminal deploys a device which basically cuts out all of their engine management systems in one go, so they basically become redundant, you know. And at that point, then I think The Rock and who's the tech guy? They go out and they buy a bunch of classic cars, which is why, you know, Paul Walker ends up with a classic Ford Escort Mexico and stuff like that, you know. So they go out and buy a bunch of classic cars because that's the answer. And that's the answer in this case as well. It's like, if you are really concerned about this sort of stuff and you are worried about, well, is my car monitoring me, or is my car monitoring the surroundings, or could my car be spying for another entity? What could I do about it? You could buy a classic car and drive that around, because it hasn't got any of the tech on it. Hasn't got any of the equipment, sensors, monitors, lidars, radars, any of that. It's just basically a car. So that's your answer. So yeah, do what I do. Drive a 1989 BMW E30 around, and you'll be fine. I'd love to hear your comments on this one, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Brown car guy. Hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit the like button and share this video as well if you can. And while you're at it, check out these guys who also sponsor my content. I am deeply grateful to them because it helps me to buy new equipment, put fuel in the cars, and yes, buy a cup of coffee. You can do the same. Just go here or right here on YouTube. Just hit these 3 little dots down here and click on thanks. Make sure you're signed in first. My content is free, but this is how you can help me keep it that way. I may even send you a gift. Oh, by the way, watch this next.